That's exactly what they said. There he is. The reason for that is it's the reason you send me that. Anyone else has made that connection? Ice shows up during worship. When we have a Latino guest preacher. Well, they're promising. Oh, good. Then, magically, they pull up the microphone that's on the floor behind the pulpit and then stick it there. I don't know if you can use it. I think it only matters if it matters. No, I was thinking just set it up. It doesn't have to speak from there. Let's just, let's see. Of course they can. I mean, they see the liturgist every single day. It's just your preference. But you have the option of using share the line.
So any questions that are just now?
So,
So the plan is to actually, when the questions are asked, we will pull the chat up here. But we'll pull the insurance chat up here on the screen.
which we've not had. So now we need to put that up.
Good morning. Please stand and join me in the call to worship. Open unto us
light for our darkness,
open unto us
courage for our fear,
open unto us
hope for our despair,
open unto us
peace for our turmoil,
open unto us
joy for our sorrow,
open unto us
strength for our weakness,
open unto us
wisdom for our confusion,
open unto us
forgiveness for our shortcomings,
open unto us
yourself for ourselves. Lord God, open unto us.
Amen. Please be seated. Welcome to worship at First Congregational Church, Portland, both to those here and those joining us by live stream. No matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are most welcome here. Judy Bishop and Eve's Circle would like you to know that 533 pairs of children's socks and underwear were donated to the Undies the Tree campaign this past December, with an additional $360 raised as well. Yeah. All right, it's a new year, and it's time for Fellowship Treat sign up once again. So today, after all the hullabaloo, please join us downstairs. And I do have sign-up sheets on the tables. And this year, we're going to not worry about whatever your birthday month is. Just sign up for any time you would love to bring some snacks for us. And on that topic, I want to remind you that the snacks do not have to be a huge thing. Finger foods are great, a few veggies, some crackers, for two reasons. First of all, we're all a little hungry after the service. And second of all, just the idea of breaking bread together is so powerful. I also don't want to dissuade those of you who enjoy a big spread. That's okay too. I love to cook for people, and so I made soup for today. But there's many treats that will be on the table that were donated by Eves yesterday. So thank you very much to the Eves who brought treats yesterday. I want to also remind you that next Sunday is Soup Sunday, every first Sunday. So if you can bring a few cans of hearty soups, that's wonderful. It goes to Clay Street Table and their efforts to feed our low-income seniors and those who are houseless. All right. Also, I wanted to remind you of our library up here. Oftentimes the door's open. I can't see right now. Larry Long has graciously been donating many of his books, and I've been going through them as they come in. And so the ones that he has donated are in the left shelves, the shelves on the left as you enter, and they're not shelved in categories yet. They're just on display. The sign-up notebook has disappeared again, but I'm just hoping that it'll reappear like it usually does. So if you like a book, just take it and return it. It's the honor system here. Please plan to remain for our 2025 annual meeting immediately following worship. It will also be live streamed on Boxcast. And now for our scripture readings this morning. Our first reading comes from the letter of James, chapter 1. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given you. Next, we hear from the book of Proverbs, chapter 3. My child, do not forget my teaching, but keep my commands in your heart, for they will prolong your life many years and bring you peace and prosperity. Let life and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck, write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and your fellow human. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to God, who will make your paths straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. This will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones. Honor God with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. My child, do not despise the Lord's discipline, and do not resent his rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those she loves. Blessed are those who find wisdom, for she is more profitable than silver and yields better returns than gold. She is more precious than rubies. Nothing you desire can compare with her. And an exhortation from the Apostle Paul to the Ephesians, chapter 4. So Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors and teachers to equip his people for works of service, so that the body of Christ may be built up until we all reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness in Christ. Then we will no longer be infants, tossed back and forth by the waves and blown here and there by every wind of cunning teaching and deceitful scheming. Instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every respect the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ, from whom the whole body, joined and held together by every supporting ligament, grows and builds itself up in love as each part does its work. Finally, an encouraging word from the prophet Jeremiah, chapter 29. This is what God says. When 70 years are so completed for Babylon, I will come to you and fulfill my good promise to bring you back to this place. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Here ends the reading.
As you are seated, please join me in a moment of silence. On a day and at a time of year when we typically reflect on the previous year, our triumphs and our shortcomings, our joys and our moments of grief, our hopes as well as our disappointments. You, O God, were there with us through them all. In the times when our faith was both affirmed and tested, you were there. And when we could not see you or your hand of support at all, even in our doubt, you still held us up. And with that on our minds, we humbly ask that you do that for us again, this day and this coming year, for we will need you again in all those times and junctions of life. We think of those who have entered this new year with more personal struggle than joy, with more challenges than celebrations, with more heartaches than heartwarming moments. And we hold them up to you for your compassion. Dear God, we give thought and offer intercession for those in our country who are striving with acts of violence perpetrated in both their cities and their schools, for an uprooted sense of safety and security, as well as those who are reeling from their understanding of the reality of our newly installed government. We hold up and out to you those we know will be targeted by it simply for who they are and not for any crime that they have committed, for justifiable stands that they have taken and held, which now pose a threat to their safety and their freedom. Even those within our midst, in this very room, who may fall into that category. Finally, O God, for those in our own faith community with many and various needs, from those stemming from health to employment to housing to relationships, be for them the strength and the supply they find lacking, and give them a peace they cannot fully understand, but that carries them through their circumstance. I invite you now to take a moment and intercede for them silently and specifically. And now please join me in an ancient yet notably progressive version of the Lord's Prayer. You from whom the breath of life comes, who fills all realms of sound and light, may your light be experienced in my utmost being. As your heavenly domain approaches, let your will come true in the universe, just as on earth. Give us wisdom for our daily need. Detach the fetters of faults that bind us, like we let go the guilt of others. Let us not be lost in superficial things, but free us from what keeps us from our true purpose. From you comes our will, our strength to act, and the song that renews itself from age to age. Grant, can we sing that song again, just a cappella? Just give us the notes, if you would, please.
you might have noticed we're doing things a little out of order today. Now is the time when we share our gifts. Please give as you are able. O God, giver of life and sustenance, we offer up ourselves to you in this moment, and from what is ours, we offer up to you. Cause it to increase to the needs it is meant to meet, and rest your blessing upon it. Amen.
I'm not signing up right now. Welcome, rejoice, and come in. This present space dedicated to God, precious in our sight. It's exactly as it was meant to be many years ago. On June 15th, 1851, a neat, comfortable church, 32 feet by 48 feet, was dedicated with a total cost of $7,400, $2,000 in debt. The Reverend George Atkinson preached the dedication sermon and assisted the same day in the organization of a church of 10 members. They voted unanimously to take the congregational form of church order and became known as the First Congregational Church of Portland, Oregon. 1 week later, Paris asked for sign-ups for the fellowship hour. I welcome you all to the 172nd annual meeting of the First Congregational United Church of Christ in Portland. Praise be to God. Our first order of business this morning is the pastor's address, the state of the church, sometimes known as the sermon. Pastor.
Thank you for indulging a slightly different format this morning. That was at my behest, so a lot of people have been patient with me in the course of today. That's right. I'd like to begin with two quotes, one ancient and one contemporary, that seem at odds with each other at first hearing. St. Paul said, "Forgetting what lies ahead, I reach forward. Forgetting what lies behind, I reach forward to what lies ahead, pressing on toward the prize of the call of God." Steve Jobs, however, had this to say: "You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking back, trusting that they will somehow connect in your future." The conflict, of course, regards what we do with our past in order to have a successful future. And I think that they are both right. We can't allow ourselves to be bound by our past if it inhibits our ability to move forward, but neither can we ignore it when our past successes or failures can provide valuable information about why and how we move forward. My goal this morning is to offer my observations and a commentary on a number of dynamics in a church since arriving just 1 year ago, to set us up for the continuing conversation about our future. The promise that we heard read in Jeremiah, "I know the plans I have for you, plans for a future and a hope," is one that I've often held to in my life. And at the end of a year that, for many of us here at the church, flipped us upside down, and entering another that may indeed do the same to the whole country, it offers hope yet again. God spoke those words of comfort to Israel after allowing them to be taken into exile by the Babylonians. And what often gets missed in its telling is the point of that exile. I believe it was that there were things in their development as a nation that they could only live into and discover by being in exile. That consignment was meant to stretch them, to prune them, to whittle down what was unnecessary and unfruitful, and to undergird and bring to the surface those things that would promote their betterment and success. Things that they could only gain by going through all that such an appointment would require. In terms of our future, we have engaged a visioning process that we will continue this year, and there are things that God expects us to do with the discoveries that we are making. Ones relevant not only to us, but they're happening also to the church universal as it struggles in the crosshairs of cultural adjustment and its own metamorphosis. Our embrace of 21st century technology during and after the pandemic yielded benefits that few, if any, saw coming. We stepped into a new way of being church, and the resulting decisions are not ones that we can come back from, nor should we. With that shift, however, comes the mandate to assess all that we do against its backdrop. And while we aren't required to disengage ourselves from the past, nor hold it in contempt, embracing the future does require us to consign it to what it is, something that we are no longer in. And with that realization comes several others. Ones I feel compelled to address today, reflecting on where we are as a church in terms of our strengths, our challenges, our opportunities, and the obstacles hindering those opportunities, and then try to connect all of that to our future and our visioning process. When beginning to name our observed strengths, I would be remiss if I didn't start with our staff, volunteers, and lay leadership. That might sound like a bit of a kiss-up, but if you've gotten to know me at all in the last year, you know that I don't play that game. Our staff is both competent and committed and get along very well. And And I will say that this year was a tough year for several of them. And I'm proud to be both their boss and a co-worker with them. In terms of lay leadership, we have a lineup of capable and tenacious people at the many posts of ministry here at First Church. And their personal investment in the mission of our church is laudable. Another thing we have going for us is our progressive spirituality, offering broad definitions and understanding of spiritual and religious life, and pursuing them in practice where and when we can. In an age of increased influence by the fundamentalist and conservative church, we are a voice to be reckoned with. Paired with that, of course, is our stance on social inclusion, offering a wide embrace to those of all personal identifications. Next, our collective commitment to excellence in both music and visual art is exceptional, and certainly something that those outside of this place have remarked about. And to that end, we are also blessed with a beautiful and a notable building and campus to promote those artistic values. And finally, our passion for social justice and the marginalized. Those not only less fortunate than we are, but who have been intentionally sidelined by society as well as by our government. This is truly a strength that you have developed a reputation for having over the years, and one that I enjoy engaging with you. Given those reflections, I'd like to begin naming some of our challenges, and I will start with why we are here today. Not the meeting, but worship, our worship experience. While the beauty of this space and opportunities it presents are significant, our worship service is perhaps not as engaged or daring as it could be, given its lack of resonance with those under a certain age cap. It'll be critical for us to spend intentional time over the next year exploring what changes and additions that we should consider in order for them to feel they are coming to a place that is culturally resonant. And on that point, we will need to have some challenging conversations about the crossroads of our hopes and their practical applications, and then make decisions regarding what is both feasible and faithful moving forward. This might include considering what traditions and ambitions we might need to let go of. And this is also an issue of discipleship, and I'm fully aware that it's not a term that we are used to using in our setting. Regarding our budget, beyond the one that will be proposed today for 2025, our discussions about the future and the use of our savings will need to include how they can and should be applied to our passions for ministry, not merely the perpetuity of our church remaining open. There are times when those two goals find themselves at cross purposes. And that leads us to our opportunities. As a people of faith, it's imperative we begin to give consideration to those areas that we must grow into more faithfully. In terms of spiritual potential, I believe that there are many. We have creative human resources here waiting to be tapped, plugged into yet untouched and undiscovered expressions of church life and worship and service. We have both the opportunity and the responsibility to create space for out-of-the-box thinking and ideas in these regards, and an obligation to empower those people and their ideas when they serve the purposes consistent with our values, even if they rub cross-grain against our sensibilities, ones that have been honed by long-held traditions and habits. The concept of outreach has the chance to both expand beyond its current expressions as well as simultaneously narrowing its focus to what we are truly good at and called to. The merging of disparate perspectives can help determine where the Spirit of God is in those endeavors, especially as new and specific areas of conviction and interest emerge during our ongoing visioning process. We should also begin expanding our adult education offerings, utilizing both clergy and lay ideas and initiatives to meet the needs of our attendees and their spiritual formation. Growing together in depth is just as important, if not more important, than simply growing in numbers. Now, you have registered a somewhat anxious passion for reaching youth and young adults in our conversations together, and that's great. Given that fact, it's important to understand that among other cultural factors, the reason young people often react negatively to the institutional church is because they're looking to experience and explore spirituality on their own terms, or at least on different ones. The mainline church's habit, however, has been to insist on defining what church and spiritual community is and then imposing those parameters within which they mistakenly feel that it must be experienced. This is one of the main reasons youth rebel against religion. The church hasn't served their spiritual needs for decades, in my observation, and many create their own structure for how they will experience God, while others simply abandon the effort due to a lack of hope or direction. We need to explore how we can incorporate that realization, that understanding, into our worship practices for the sake of the unchurched who are still hungry for something beyond themselves. Those that bemoan the need for younger members while insisting they experience religious life within the limited expressions that they themselves understand will always find themselves kicking against the bricks. And with that in mind, I am proposing creating a 21st century task force who will explore what causes some local churches to thrive in the midst of shrinking trends, and how they are ministering to younger populations in a 21st century context. Learning how to adapt to the cultural shifts of 21st century life and ministry is vital to getting a handle on and understand more deeply. We are also an open and progressive voice expressed by a welcoming community, you. At a time in public life and politics that many people's freedoms are literally, this past week even, on the chopping block. The intersection of our location with our theology and social postures offers the chance to minister to those groups uniquely and invite them in with open arms. And that's not simply an opportunity. I think that's a larger part of the call of God on this congregation, in this place and at this time. You know, in the biblical book of Esther, for those of you that might be familiar with the story, and if not, feel free to go read it after we're done. It's an interesting story, and it's short. When she hesitated putting her life on the line for her people, her stepfather, Mordecai, reminded her of something that she knew but had not taken into account until that moment of confrontation. And to paraphrase what he said, it is precisely because of what is at risk, for them and for you, that you were placed here by God in this time and place with both your inherent courage and your status of influence. Perhaps the same might be true of us. I would like to take a brief detour for a moment as we shift from our potential opportunities to looking at the obstacles that we will face implementing them, and talk about something that, if you're a chess player, you might be familiar with. The term is Zugzwang. It's a German word describing a strategic yet awkward situation found in the game in which a player is put at a clear disadvantage by their opponent because of the forced obligation to make a move. A player is said to be in Zugzwang when any move on the board will worsen their position. And if you're a chess player, you know exactly what I mean. So why am I bringing that up? It's so random, right? Many, if not most, mainline churches in the U.S. are on a path toward Zugzwang, in which they are either struggling or unable to move forward into the future without having to make what to them feel like self-sabotaging decisions, ones that push them further and further toward eventually closing their doors. And having worked in transitional ministry for 2 decades, it is my opinion that most of those churches will succumb to such a fate within the next 5 to 10 years. That is just a statistic looking at the last 20 years. And if we look at ourselves from an aerial view and lacking any deliberate interruption in our determination to have, quote, church as we have always known it, we may also be on the same trajectory. Despite our identification as a progressive and justice-motivated community, we are nonetheless in that category of churches that struggle with finding and identifying themselves and balk at surrendering some of the things that may hold significant meaning to us, but in the end are not relatable to those that we are desperate to draw into our ranks. What will rescue us from that fate will be the determination to push against our own wishes for what is familiar and comfortable, even if it threatens tradition, in order to lean into the discomfort of change. That determination can come in several different forms, but they all hold this in common: the inherent need to bend to cultural shifts and engage the necessary adjustments. This is where we need to explore the poignant need for adaptive change. Ron Heifetz, an author and expert on that very thing, says this: the most common cause of failure in leadership and organizations happens when they treat adaptive challenges as if they were technical problems. The difference is that while technical problems may be very complex and important, they have known solutions that can be implemented with current knowledge. Adaptive challenges, however, can only be addressed through changes in people's priorities, beliefs, habits, and loyalties. Sherry Dew, whom we quoted last week, said something similar when she suggested that, in the end, what life really is a test of our deepest desires. Our priorities, in other words, both individually and corporately. How we name and pursue those priorities. What price we are prone to pay for them. And what we are willing or unwilling to cast to the margins in order to satisfy. That can be an indicting truth for those that aren't quite in tune with just how much selfishness has the capability of motivating our actions, even in church. Heifetz then continues, making progress requires mobilizing new discovery, shedding entrenched ways, tolerating losses, and generating a new capacity to thrive in a new environment. while wrestling with the questions of value and purpose. Any organization, he says, facing a shifting culture must develop the capacity to adapt to changing circumstances as a way of life. And my experience tells me that he is absolutely and fundamentally correct. I would like to highlight just two other things to have surfaced during this last year that I would identify as obstacles to our successful future. And the first comes out of our visioning process thus far. It's my overall assessment from poring through the results of these 3 sessions that we have had, the last one being the most poignant, that our congregation believes our greatest problem is an issue of marketing. How can we get the word out more effectively to let those who we wish were here on Sundays know that we're here and that we are welcoming them? That's a fair question. What also came up was the need in many people's minds to hire a marketing and social media manager. An interest, by the way, that I am not at all opposed to, for the record. Tying that recommendation to the thoughts that I just shared, however, we find that a greater obstacle than that exists. We currently have very little to offer those that we are wanting to invite. If you're a parent, allow me to draw a perhaps stressed analogy, but one I think in some ways viable regardless. You send an invitation list out to all the neighborhood children to a birthday party for your child. To your delight, they all RSV, their parents all say they're coming, and they show up on that day, ready to celebrate, some of them even bringing birthday gifts. But when you open the door and they start coming inside, they discover there is no food, no music, no decorations or entertainment. There's not even a cake. But you're so happy that they finally came that when they suddenly turn around and begin leaving, you are absolutely stumped as to why. We here at our church have many resources that are encased in a passion to see vibrant ministry exude out of this place. I share that passion. But those resources, some of them anyway, have not yet been developed in the ways that are necessary to offer to those we wish were a part of us. In short, we can't sell what we don't yet have. Marketing is not our greatest challenge or obstacle. It's the imperative to really dig in, do our homework and our research, and find out what those groups are actually looking and hungry for with regard to 2 things: spirituality and community. There are plenty of options for them to explore their other social as well as activism passions. But spiritual life outside of the traditional church experience is what many of them crave. And we cannot simply invite them to a party that has little they resonate with or recognize as being relevant to them. Otherwise, they simply will not come back. And most here in this room, I would dare say, don't realize just how many times that has happened here over the last year. The second obstacle I want to only briefly name, since it will take far too much time to unpack than we have this morning, but I promise we will do that, is what I have observed as a somewhat interruptive distrust in pastoral leadership and in the pastoral office in general. Having lived into this calling at First Church for a year now, it is fairly clear to me that our congregation as a whole, as a unit, though there are certainly individual exceptions, is still not yet past the trauma of less than optimal relationships with its former pastors. And that dynamic has had a negative impact on our relationship as well. At the end of the day, an untenable one. And not addressing it will not be an option. So I'm going to propose to our leadership that we begin a process of investigating this with deliberation, with the goal of realigning our relational dynamic and getting the proverbial train back on the track, so to speak. This will involve whole congregational dialogue at some point, and we will certainly keep you informed as to where we are in pursuing that objective. I want to close with some very brief comments on a few things that I see for our future. I've already mentioned my intention to inaugurate a 21st century task force for the purposes that I described. The next step in our visioning process will be on Sunday, February 23rd, immediately following worship. This one, you can thank me later, will only be 90 minutes long and will be intentionally designed to get you out before those pesky parking meters kick in. That gathering will have two objectives. First, to discuss the results of our last session in November, specifically as they relate to this morning's message, and our need to begin putting legs to those ideas. And second, I will begin sharing with you some of my own thoughts about what should be a part of that picture, what I personally am passionate about, how I see those things unfolding in this setting, and why I think they're worth pursuing buy-in and resourcing. I've also become engaged with a few other millennial pastors who together are imagining what ministry to that population might look like in our city. Those conversations are new and somewhat raw, but they hold the excitement of new discovery. So I'll share more with you as those conversations evolve. First Congregational Church Portland has a lot going for it. A group of loving, supportive, passionate people who are trying to figure out where in the world we fit in the scheme of things. And the one thing we really need is a common understanding of our destiny. Discerning that will be our primary task and challenge this next year. Discovering who we are, and at the same time, who and what we are not. We can do many things, but we can't do them all well. No church can. So sifting out what we are meant and called by God to do and to be will be vital. As I close, God's promise in Jeremiah continued. Then you will call on me and pray to me, and I will listen. You will seek me and find me when you search for me with all of your heart. And I will be found by you and bring you back from where I carried you into exile. This year was a challenging one for many of us, and for some, continues to be. But God has walked with us through all of it and will continue to do so. NHL Wayne Gretzky said, legend, I don't follow hockey, so I'm taking them at their word, but NHL legend Wayne Gretzky said this: a good hockey player plays where the puck is. A great hockey player goes to where the puck is going to be. As we move into this next year, we simply need courage. Courage to explore without editing ourselves. Courage to admit to what we find, both good and bad. and courage to make some key and perhaps difficult decisions in order to own that identity faithfully and effectively. Oscar Wilde said, "Be yourself. Everyone else is taken." And that's our challenge. And I intend to hold us to just that over the next year, even if doing so proves to be easier said than done. Would you pray with me, please? Holy God, as we reflect on both the year behind and the year ahead of us, grant us wisdom in all that we undertake, including the decisions that we make today. Help us hear your voice, your heartbeat, and your will in our discussions. We invite you to be here and talk with us and enlighten us. Amen. This is up if you want.
Thank you, Pastor. I needed that. I think many of us needed that. We're going to continue with our annual meeting now. And I did want to acknowledge my gratitude to Frank Baldwin for being a parliamentarian here. We are grateful for him keeping me on track, and I know you will be grateful for him keeping me on track as well. I also wanted to acknowledge that we're passing out now the annual reports that will be the foundation of the meeting going forward. And with that in mind, I'm going to turn the meeting over to our Secretary Clerk, Susan Adcock.
In order to establish a quorum for the meeting, could you please, if you are a member of the church, raise your hand and keep it raised for just a few minutes? Okay. $15? All right. All right. The quorum was only 10% of the number of members, but so we do have a quorum with 36 people present, plus probably some online. But we don't need to worry about that. If you would look in your annual report, the meeting minutes for last year's meeting are on page 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. If you take a minute to just look at it, a few seconds to look at it, then I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes. We have a motion. Do we have a second? All right. All in favor of accepting the minutes as written, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? All right. Thank you very much. I'll turn it back over to you.
In preparation for today's meeting, I reviewed the agenda with some folks in the church, and I'd like to propose maybe a slight change of the wording here for the next item. Vote to accept the annual report. I don't suppose many of you have had a chance to digest all the information that has been disseminated here. So I'm going to suggest that, yeah, you can accept the report, but I ask that you receive it first and foremost, that you receive the annual report. And we're going to go through much of it this morning in one way or another. And certainly there will be many opportunities going forward for you to ask questions or to provide commentary about certain elements of that report. So I'm going to ask you to, I will make a motion to receive the annual report for 2024 as distributed. And I look for a second. Thank you, Sani. Any comments or any questions about that motion? Well then, moving forward, all those who favor receiving the annual report, please say aye. Aye. If there's any opposed, any abstentions, the report is received. One of the challenges, as we've noted at the beginning of this meeting, is that we're a little bit out of place with some of our elements, and some people are out of place, and especially our treasurer, Bruce Bishop. He is currently in Arizona. And so because Boxcast does not allow sort of a give and take element easily, Frank has gone to the extreme length of creating a video. Bruce, I just looked at Frank Baldwin. You're going to be on my mind all day today. Bruce has created a video to position our understanding of this proposed budget that has been approved by the Church Council for 2024. It now will respond to your questions and your approval. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Adam's thumb, hi Adam, who will run the video from Bruce.
Good morning. I'm joining you from Green Valley, Arizona, where Judy and I have been for the past 2+ weeks. We'll return to Portland Wednesday. I'm sorry not to be at the meeting in person. I'm going to give a brief overview of the 2025 budget prepared by the Budget Development Committee and recommended for approval by the Church Council. Last year at this time, when we approved the 2024 budget, we hardly knew how the year would roll out. We expected we would be facing many challenges in the year, and that turned out to be true. We're in the same situation now for the new year. The budget projects that we will receive $744,818, about $23,000 less than we received last year. Our pledge income at $126,000 is expected to be higher than last year's, and we're budgeting $40,000 in general gifts. Importantly, our building income will be lower than last year because of our renegotiation with Metro of our 5-year adjustment on our 99-year lease of the property under the P5 theaters. We will be receiving about $60,000 less annually than we did. See line 4301. And last year we received about $50,000 in building rentals, line 4305, more than we'd budgeted, mostly because of the Amazon filming in September. Under grants, line 4400, the bequest from Garth and Grace Brown continues to support the church as the second largest amount of income we receive. As the pie chart depicts, 3/4 of our budgeted income comes from other than pledges and general gifts. Our budgeted expenses are expected to be $863,000, nearly $60,000 higher than our actual expenses last year. This means that our budgeted income will be less than our expected expenses by just over $29,000. The difference will be drawn from our investment funds to balance our budget, as we did last year with the transfer of $37,000 in budgeted reserve funds, line 9205. Our budgeted expenses fall in four major and interrelated areas: administration, facility, mission, and personnel. The biggest new expenditure in 2025 will be for the fabrication and installation of the portico gates, which is budgeted at $125,000, line 68071. These expenses are being paid from bequests to the church from Chuck and Rita Knapp, line 9005, and from Phil Grubaugh, line 40531. Were it not for these generous bequests, the portico gates would severely impinge on other church resources. Under the facility area, there are significant changes included in line 6951 for our property and liability insurance. We are proposing to drop coverage against earthquakes and floods, whose combined premium for this year would be over $36,000. This will save the church about $22,000. Stated another way, to continue these two coverages would more than double our annual premium. Under personnel, the most notable change in expenses derives from the elimination of the business manager position, line 6615. Over the past year, our full and part-time staffers have demonstrated their ability to carry out their jobs effectively and faithfully, and we're deeply appreciative of their services. Thank you for the opportunity to have served as the church treasurer for the past 2 years. I urge the congregation's approval of the recommended budget.
I'm going to call for a motion to receive and approve the budget. Do I have a motion on the floor? I would move that we receive the budget as presented by Bruce Bishop. Ann Lasky moves that we receive the budget as presented by Bruce Bishop. Is there a second? Elaine, thank you. Any questions or comments that you may have? Obviously, Bruce will not be able to respond to the questions immediately, but we do have some people here in the room who were on the budget committee who may be able to provide some insight into the rationale for the various line items in the budget. Are there any questions that you may have about the budget for 2024? I know the print here is really, really small. 2025, excuse me, thank you. I know the print here is really small and it's difficult to see the line items and the numbers. For those of you who don't have magnifying glasses with you, Ted Hyde and I and Ron and Lana Danaher will be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. Oh, cell phones work using your camera to enlarge. We can be very cool and technology sufficient with our phones, can't we? I see no hands going up. Bruce did provide a pretty thorough introduction to the budget a few weeks ago after worship. So I'm assuming that most of the questions that you may have had about the money that we're going to receive and expend for 2025 has been addressed. But certainly, this being a very open congregation, you are allowed and encouraged to ask questions throughout the year of any element of our stewardship of the resources that we have. Are there any other questions or concerns that you have? Then I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of receiving the budget as distributed and explained by our treasurer, Bruce Bishop, for 2025, say aye, please. Aye. Is there any opposition? Any abstentions? It passes unanimously. I sat down too quickly before the budget was introduced by me to see if any of you have any questions at all. Those of you who may have had an opportunity to read the annual report online as it was distributed by April Alexander during the week. Did you have any questions at all about any of the reports or items that were listed in the annual report? Well, again, I will just say that if you ever do have questions, we are more than willing and eager to respond to your concerns and your questions about any of the activities of the life of this congregation. So please don't hesitate to be in touch with us. Yes.
Bruce has made it, so he is live on the chat. He just can't.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
What's the wording to receive or to approve the budget? I said so he's actually ready to know it's.
Okay. The church clerk will note that the appropriate wording would be that we approve the annual budget as presented by our treasurer, not receive. Well, we received it and then we approved it. So I'm not going to call for a second vote if that's okay with you. I have to? Okay. All those in favor of approving, not just receiving, but approving the 2025 budget, please say aye. All of you who are doubters and naysayers and the slime of the earth who don't want to approve the budget, please say aye. We have none here. How wonderful. Are there any abstentions? No. So thank you, Bruce, for making sure that we did that correctly. We voted on the budget. We've approved it. The election of the church council for 2025 is included in your annual report. The update is that we will have continuing with new officers and a nominating committee. The members of the church council going forward will be Kevin Smith as moderator, Bill Kunitz as past moderator. Moderator-elect, let me explain that to you. We do not have a person to put forward today. We have worked hard on this. We have reached out to several of you in the congregation to ask for your consideration of this responsibility. And for one reason or another, all very good, we were not able to come up with a candidate. And so the responsibility for naming a moderator-elect falls to the current moderator-elect, and the pastor. And we made a decision a week or two ago that rather than rush to just put a warm body in that role without having an opportunity to really thoroughly vet and understand the relationship that that person would have with our council, we've decided that we are going to hold off and we will name that person. We will continue to look for an opportunity to name someone to that role. But in the bylaws, it allows the church council to fill vacancies on the council. And so that's what we decided to do. So if any of you feel so moved to nominate the person sitting next to you, or someone even better who's not here, please feel free to contact Kevin Smith, Pastor Derek, or me, and we will be happy to entertain your suggestion. Proceeding with the members of the council for 2025, Bruce Bishop will continue as treasurer, thank goodness, and Susan Adcock, thank goodness, as clerk secretary, and Ann Lasky and Ted Moltness as members at large. A new member at large is put forward here for your consideration, Cheryl Clevenger, for a 3-year term that will end in 2027. Also on the nominating committee, which is appointed by the church as a whole, we have Ann Lasky and Cheryl Clevenger for the next year. For a 2-year term, Bill Green and Elaine Moltness, and for a 3-year term, Paris Hancock and Phil Owen. Are there any other nominations from the floor that you would like to propose at this time? Hearing none, seeing no hands up, will somebody move the acceptance of this slate of officers and what did I say? Approval. Thank you, Phil. I'm just sort of an accepting kind of guy, you know? I got to get over that. The approval of these folks to be the leadership of the church. Jim Sickle has made the motion, and Andrea Hyde has seconded it. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor of approving these folks for leadership roles in the church, please say aye. Any opposition? Any abstentions? Seeing none, I am very grateful to pass over the leadership of the church council to Kevin Smith. But before I do, come on up. Before I do, I just wanted to say how much in my role as moderator I have benefited from the present members of the church council who have been my rock and my safe place. I really appreciated your counsel and your leadership, especially our friend sitting way in the back. Thank you, Christina, for all that you did for the last 3 years as a member of the council, the hard questions that you asked, and for the leadership of Paris Hancock, who continues to show us how to do it at First Church. We are so grateful. I am so grateful for your leadership.
I think I'm thanking you, Bill. No, I know that I'm thanking you. I would like to express the appreciation, my appreciation for all the efforts of Reverend Derek and Bill and the council that they have made in this past year to lead us. Their dedication and their hard work during some times of change and some difficult times in the life of our church are greatly appreciated. I look forward to working with Reverend Derek, the council, and all of you as we continue to discern our church's vision of mission and ministry in Portland. It is my prayer and my hope that as we face the challenges and opportunities to serve our Creator through this church family, that we do so in love for each other and for our neighbors. And we do so with kindness and thoughtfulness and compassion. And yes, sometimes even forgiveness. The changing nature of faith communities and the place of religion in our public and private lives will demand kind, good people working together and supporting one another if we are to follow the path that Jesus has led us on. I ask you to please be patient with me as I am very new to the work of the council, and indeed new to the church relative to many of you. I am happy to chat, to discern with anyone about the work of God that we are doing here at First Congregational and this little corner of the planet. Thanks to each member of the council. This past year, Bill and Susan Adcock, Ann Lasky, Paris, Christina Helms, Bruce Bishop, our treasurer, Ted Malkness, and April Alexander, our front office staff, and to Reverend Derek. Thank you to all the members of the church staff. These are your faithful servants. Each one has given their energy and their creativity and their heart to conduct the necessary business of our church, to care for your needs, to being stewards of this building and providing financial stewardship of the church missions and ministries. Thanks to Christina and Susan Rogers as they have left the council in Paris. And we wish them all our best and our deep appreciation. And thank you to Cheryl Clevenger for joining the new council. And to all of the missions and ministries of this church, there are so many to name. I won't name them all today, but this is a church that cares about people, about those on the margins, about those who have been oppressed in this country. Bill, would you like to say something?
One of the challenges of standing at the podium is that I couldn't see the screens behind. And when I sat down, I noticed that Bruce Bishop had an objection to what just happened. And I don't know if I completely understand it from what it is written. Can you clarify that for us? Bylaws? He voted no on the slate. He said it was the congregation's responsibility, which... Can we go back? Can we go back just to understand? I'm sorry to interrupt this, but I didn't want to let that go by.
Yeah, okay. Say that, Frank.
Can you roll that down a little bit? What does he say about that?
everybody hear me okay? I'm going to read this out just to make sure that everybody can hear or read what it says. At 11:47, Bruce said, no, it doesn't, it's the congregation's responsibility. I believe that might be related to the budget approval. Wait, Chris has a clarification.
Sorry, I believe he was talking about you had mentioned that the bylaws allow leadership to choose members.
Council, according to the bylaws, council can fill vacancies on the council.
Yeah, I believe that's what he was saying. But I don't know for certain. We'll have to wait until he's back.
I agree with that. I think that's the interpretation.
Okay. So he's voting no on a slate because of the moderator-elect position. Okay. Everybody understand that? Susan, you want to say something?
So there's one no vote.
This one here. The election of officers, council members, and congregational committee members shall be held at the annual meeting. I'm reading under Article 8, elections. The council shall fill any vacancy occurring in any office or voting membership on council between annual meetings. The council may fill any vacancy occurring in a committee as it deems advisable. Okay.
And we certainly will bring that moderator-elect name to the congregation for information.
Sure. So our understanding is that the council can appoint a moderator-elect without a vote of the congregation. Is that correct, Frank?
Any vacancy on the council between congregational meetings, but that doesn't answer Bruce's objection to the congregational meeting not electing an officer. I think that a way to do this would be when a candidate has been selected and chosen by the council to confirm that decision in a congregational vote.
Okay. 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 I agree with Frank. So when the council comes up with a candidate for moderator-elect, we will open up a congregational meeting, probably after a church service in the near future, and we will ask the congregation to affirm that appointment. Okay. All right. Well, I was going to say a lot of nice things about you, Bill, but I will go ahead anyway. Thank you, Bill. So Bill has gone above and beyond, really, in his dedication and hard work to the council, to this church, to all of you in this past year. He has unselfishly given of his heart and his mind and a lot of his time through some complex times in our church. I enjoyed immensely working with Bill and others on the search process, and I appreciate that he will be continuing to give me advice and mentorship as I assume this role as your moderator. Bill, I have a little token of appreciation I'd like to give you. Let's just say that it will give you lots of omega-3 vitamins. You can open it up and So Bill will be eating at a seafood restaurant in the very near future. You might want to ask to join him.
Be nice to me.
Yes, be nice to Bill. Thank you, Bill. Is there any additional business of the congregational meeting that anyone would like to bring forward? Hearing none, I think we have a hymn to proceed to. Would you please join me in prayer? Gracious and loving God, we thank you for this church family. We ask for your guidance and strength and courage as this next year proceeds. Help us to have open hearts and open minds, that we might discern your will and your creativity as we move forward in serving you, in serving our neighbors. Help us to love one another, be kind and compassionate towards one another. And we thank you, oh God, that we have a congregation that follows the congregational democratic process in which everyone has a voice and a vote. Bless us on our way. Thank you for this beautiful community in which we live. Help us to be light and love and kindness. Amen. May I have a motion to adjourn? Second? It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn this congregational meeting. Thank you all for being here today. God bless you.